Good morning. I'm Angelo Castro III.
I'm Angela, and we are the Castros.
We bring you the news.
And the views that make you think.
Sometimes we agree.
Sometimes we don't.
This is News and Views.
And here are today's headlines.
The House Prosecution Panel expressed confidence that it has sufficient evidence to support all 4 articles of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte.
The Interior Department maintains that there was no attack at the Senate during the May 13 gunfire incident.
Talks of another Senate leadership coup continues to stir tensions in the upper chamber.
Energy authorities are currently reviewing grid performance, including supply shortages and unplanned shutdowns of generating plants during periods of peak demand.
First in the news, House prosecutors have now been divided into 4 groups, each handling at least 1 article of impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte. Here's the report.
Batangas 2nd District Representative Jervil Luistro will lead the 11 lawmakers who will serve as prosecutors in the looming impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte. Luistro believes forthwith does not only refer to the convening of the impeachment court, but to the trial itself.
It is the trial that is mandated to be forthwith. We therefore look forward that after the pre-trial, we will immediately proceed to the presentation of witnesses, presentation of evidence, and consequently to the judgment.
As part of due process, Luistro says it would be better for the Vice President to attend the trial.
The people are waiting for her answers. So, aligned to that accountability mandate, I believe she should attend and present her defense.
The House prosecutors have been divided into 4 groups, each assigned to 1 article of impeachment against the Vice President. For Article 1, or the alleged misuse of confidential funds, Luistro will serve as lead prosecutor. For Article 2, or the alleged unexplained wealth of Vice President Sara Duterte, Congressman Terry Redon will lead the group. For Article 3, or the alleged bribery of DepEd officials, Congressman Joel Chua will serve as lead. And for Article 4 involving the alleged threats against the life of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and his family, the group will be led by Congressman Lawrence Defensor.
We're very confident with the evidence that we have. We have been prepared with this since last year. The evidence being very obvious and very clear. It speaks for itself.
Given the entirety of the body of evidence that we had seen, tingin ko naman po, on unexplained wealth pa lang po, we can secure a conviction of the Vice President.
But what if senator judges block the presentation of evidence?
Sa simula pa lang, kung gusto po namin na magtawag ng witness o kaya magpresenta ng mga dokumento, ay nasa sa prosecution po yon.
It would be unfair to say that it was purely political. We trust fully that when they take on their roles as other judges, they will perform their duties properly.
Former spokesperson of the Senate Impeachment Court, Attorney Reggie Tongo, said that former Senate President Tito Sotto not being a lawyer could be a factor in his ouster. In an interview with One News's Political Beat, Tongo noted that presiding officer or presiding over impeachment proceedings requires strong familiarity with legal concepts and technical procedures. He added that it would be preferable for the presiding officer to have at least some grounding in law to effectively oversee such proceedings. He also pointed out that this year's impeachment proceedings are different from last year's, noting there have been no major issues or disruptions so far.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the coup last week we have seen happened as it is, because of the fact that Senator Tito Sotto, Senate President then, is not a lawyer. I think it's a good move that the next presiding officer should also have at least a modicum of knowledge about the law, or at least medyo nakapagtapos ng abogasya.
Legal experts and former government officials are currently discussing escalating political and legal controversies involving the Senate at a forum in Manila. For more details, we have mobile journalist Arles de los Santos. Arles, go ahead.
Angela at Diego, inaasahan nga na nasa 3 to 4 months lamang hahaba o tatagal ang impeachment trial laban kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Ayan ang tansya ng ilang mga law deans at professors sa isinasagawang talakayan dito nga sa Maynila ngayong araw matapos ngang mag-convene na ang Senado bilang impeachment court. Kumpara kasi daw sa mga nauna o mga nagdaang impeachment trials ng bansa. Kagaya, for example, kay dating Chief Justice Renato Corona, tumagal ito ng nasa 4 5 months mula noong December 2011 hanggang May 2012. Pinili raw kasi ng Kamara that time na piliin yung shortcut method kung saan kailangan lamang yung 1/3 na boto ng mga mambabata sa mababang kapulungan para ito ay matransmit nga sa Senado yung articles of impeachment, and then yung kay dating Pangulong Estrada naman ay nag-resign nga ito after 23 days lamang yung tinagal. At kabukod pa dyan, 4 lang daw kasi yung grounds for impeachment laban kay Vice President Sara Duterte, kaya malakas yung posibilidad na mas maging mabilis ito at yung syempre yung taktika na gagawin ng prosekusyon na nakita nga natin ay hinati-hati na ng Kamara kung ano yung mga issue na kanilang pagpupukusan. At yan nga, yung sa 4 na grounds, nandyan yung misuse of public funds, unexplained wealth, bribery at betrayal of public trust. Pero malaking factor pa rin kung haharap nga ba si Vice President Sara Duterte sa impeachment trial laban sa kanya.
Well, although sabi nga nung mga nakakausap din namin dito like Congressman Terry Redon and other legal luminaries, hindi naman daw required sa konstitusyon ang pagdalo ni Vice President Sara Duterte sa kanyang impeachment case. Pero gaano kahalaga yung kanyang pagdalo if ever dito sa paglilitis sa kanya?
Actually, Angela, napakahalaga, kasi bukod daw sa isang public official itong si Vice President Sara Duterte, ito din ay paghabol doon sa accountability at mahalaga rin na makita ng taong bayan kung paano nga ba ipepresenta yung mga impormasyon dito. Ayon sa mga law deans at professors na kasama dito ngayong araw, kagaya na lamang ni na Attorney Paulo Tamase ng UP College of Law at ni Attorney Adonis Gabriel mula naman sa San Beda University at ni Dean Maria Soledad Derquito Mawis mula naman sa Dean of College of Law ng Lyceum of the Philippines. Itong mangyayaring impeachment trial ay yung accountability nga na paghabol, and yung impormasyon na makukuha ng publiko mula rito ay malaki rin yung gampanin na makukuha nito, dahil ngayon napakabilis na raw talaga na maglabas ng mga impormasyon sa media, or yung anywhere, anytime may makukuha talaga tayong information. But of course, yung pagsagot dito sa mga alegasyon at mga issue na ipinupukol sa bise ay kailangan din talagang harapin present man or hindi si Vice President Sara Duterte, dahil dalawa yung posibleng mangyari sa pwede nating asahan. Yung kanyang resignation and syempre kung magtuloy-tuloy impeachment trial, yung perpetual disqualification na of course kailangan pa rin suriin ng mga haharap na prosekusyon sa Senate trial.
Pinag-usapan ba, Arles, ng mga legal experts regarding evidence at hand, if it is, they feel if it is strong or sufficient enough? At ano sa mga articles of impeachment sa 4 ang tingin nilang pinakamalakas?
Diego, hindi pa nakakapili or wala pang nababanggit kung ano nga doon sa 4 na grounds ng impeachment ni Vice President Sara Duterte ang umano'y pinakamalakas. Pero ayon sa kanila, napakalaki ng magiging gampanin dito ng presiding officer or ng Senate President sa impeachment trial. Dahil kung matatandaan natin, itong sino man, kung for example sa ngayon, si SP Cayetano, yung ating presiding officer, meron siyang kapangyarihan na magdesisyon na may kinalaman sa procedure, materiality, relevance at admissibility ng mga ebidensya. And if ever na hindi ito agrihan ng mga senator judges, ang desisyon nito ay kailangan maging majority vote. So vague din daw or limitado yung desisyon ng Korte Suprema kung ano nga ba yung type or mode ng pagpepresenta ng mga ebidensya ng isang impeachment trial. Kasi ayon daw sa kanila, limitado din yung komento na inilalabas ng SC dahil kahit yung ating mga associate justices ay impeachable officials in its nature. Kaya sa ganong paraan, limitado talaga yung paraan at yung itinatakda ng konstitusyon, though meron naman mga witnesses na pwedeng iharap at syempre yung mga papeles at dokumento na magdidiin nga dito kay Vice President Sara Duterte.
Arles, sa issue naman ng ICC, anong stand nila with regards kung enforceable nga ba ang arrest warrant kay Senator Bato or hindi?
malinaw yung kanilang posisyon dyan, Diego, no? Enforceable talaga. Maaaring ipatupad pa rin yung warrant of arrest laban nga kay Senator Bato de la Rosa. At actually, bago tayo tumalon dito fully sa usapan ng ICC, no? Isa rin pala sa mga nabanggit nila dito, kung tatayo nga rin ba or makakasama ba bilang Senator Judge si Senator Bato de la Rosa, dahil kung hindi raw siya haharap sa Senado para manumpa, kailangan niyang gawin ang kanyang panunumpa virtually, pero kailangan niyang sabihin kung nasaan siya mismo. But of course, it's a question kung sasabihin niya ba ngayon kung nasaan siya, dahil meron ngang legal team na yung DOJ na inassign para tuntunin kung nasaan man ang senador. But then again, yun nga, sa jurisdiction ng ICC, kailangan pa rin ma-enforce dahil bago kumalas ang Pilipinas, na-file ang mga kaso at hanggang ngayon sa pagulong nito, kailangan irespeto yung pagiging bahagi natin doon. At meron din daw, no, aminado naman sila na meron nga tayong mga batas na nag-govern patungkol doon sa crimes against humanity at iba pang mga kaso, at actually nauna pa nga daw yung ating mga batas bago tayo sumali sa Rome Statute, no? Kaya daw kailangan irespeto natin ito at igalang yung legal na proseso, lalo pa na si Senator Bato de la Rosa ay ngayon hindi natin alam kung nasaan.
Oo, mahalagang pag-usapan talaga, pagtuunan ng pansin yung rules na yan, na kung papayagan nila bumoto ang isang senador na wala mismo sa plenaryo, dahil may isa pang looming na arrest na baka mangyari, pati si Senator Jinggoy Estrada and other involved in the flood control projects ay mawala doon sa impeachment court. But we'll see what's going to happen. We will continue to get in touch with you. Maraming salamat, mobile journalist Arles de los Santos.
Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla says evidence does not support claims that an attack took place at the Senate on May 13. Remulla and PNP Chief Jose Melencio Nartates presented CCTV footage showing how the incident unfolded at the GSIS complex and Senate building. Remulla reiterated that the presence of NBI agents in the area was only meant to secure the GSIS premises and not to enter or attack the Senate. He also said the agents were not wearing tactical gear, which he says showed there was no intention to launch an attack.
Pagkatapos ng 6 na araw na masusing pag-iimbestigasyon, paghagilap po ng lahat ng available videos, interviews, affidavits, ay marami po kaming conclusion na nakuha. For the record, all evidence points that there was no attack on the Senate.
In a separate press conference, NBI Director Melvin Matibag also clarified that his personnel were not in the Senate when gunshots were exchanged.
What was told to me by the senators, sa loob ng Senate, binabaril sila. And the ballistics ng bala, yung papasok, makikita niyo yung ballistic, papunta lahat sa GSIS yung tamaan ng bala, walang papunta sa Senado. They were never put in danger.
Well, all of these findings were supported by the actual video. Although, kung hindi ka maalam masyado sa video, medyo mahihirapan ka. Pero yung pinapoint out ni Secretary Remulla, yung gunfire, makikita mo it's one way, one-sided. Makikita mo kasi, hindi mo makikita yung lipad ng mga bala, but you can see the muzzle fire. Yung light, the gunpowder, pag pumuputok ang baril.
Diba, in any investigation, ang mahalaga saan papunta, ano yung trajectory ng pagputok ng baril, 'di ba? And mahalaga din na nakikita din natin doon sa naging report din ni Gio Robles na nandoon sila sa kabila, 'di ba? Kasama nila yung NBI at nagpatunay nga doon na nakita natin na sarado yung kabila. Actually sinasara ng NBI yun ng JSIS personnel, may kasamang NBI personnel. At doon nga nakita natin na hindi nila alam kung saan gagaling yung putok, no? They were clueless with what's happening.
Actually, it's supported not only by our media entity and outlet, but another media entity as well, na you could see na it comes from a camera, hindi scripted camera. Parang it was just recording events that were happening. And nagulat sila, may putukan doon, ang galing, may usok doon, ano nangyayari? And then they were running.
Exactly. And at one point, maririnig mo yung isang, I think security doon nagsasabi, tago kasi hindi natin alam kung saan nanggagaling, baka matamaan sila.
Saka
so they were really clueless.
There was a distinct voice sa gilid na babae, sinasabi, don't engage daw, wag mag-engage. So that means they were a little far from where the gunshots, because they were pointing out to a building kung saan ang usok. So that means medyo malayo sila sa bridge area. And all of this supported by the actual CCTV video evidence, proves that hindi to gawa-gawa ng statement lamang, that walang encounter.
There was no
encounter.
attack, diba?
There's no counter, yes.
Oo. Tsaka syempre, ang tanong din natin dito, ano yung pananagutan ng Senado? Because all of these were happening, diba, at the back of the mind of the Sergeant at Arms to protect the Senate and Senator Bato de la Rosa. But with us now is former Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio. Good morning po. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning, Angelo and Angela.
Opo. Thank you po again for joining us. But of course, there's a lot of issues to unpack. Pero ito po muna, ito pong recent finding ng DILG based on what has been presented so far. Ano po yung nakikita nating legal basis or legal issues that actually stood out po doon sa gun-related incident?
Well, yun nga, ang sinabi ng that there was no armed attack, no? So, yeah, and they fired their firearms, so they can be madaming kaso yan, no? They can be for madami yan. That's an illegal discharge of firearms, mga ganyan.
And then, of course, ang tinatanong din po natin dito, all of this were happening because nag-ugat po ito doon sa pag-issue ng ICC warrant kay Senator Bato de la Rosa and the Senate, nagbigay po sila ng protective custody. If ever po, ano po ba yung pinaka-pananagutan ng Senado po dito?
Well, ang dyan, obstruction of justice, no? And ang penalty niyan is perpetual disqualification to hold public office. So, pwede sila kasuhan because if you're a public officer and you obstruct justice, ang penalty is accessory penalty, no? Is perpetual disqualification to hold public office. Dahil they stopped or prevented the service of warrant of arrest. No? That is obstruction of justice under the definition of obstruction of justice. So, pwede sila sampahan yan.
Well, Justice, sa mga nakikita niyo pong so far, mga interviews, evidence, statements that have been going back and forth, is it may specific senators ba that you think are more liable than the others? Like, for example, sinasabi ng iba, si Senator Robin Padilla may have directly taken Senator Bato out.
Yes.
If so, ano po ang... yes. Go ahead, Justice.
Si Senator Robin, if he was the one who spirited out Bato, then that he will be an accused in obstruction of justice. No?
Pero kasi Justice, so far yung stand ng majority ng Senate is they do not recognize the arrest warrant. Therefore, there was no escape or aiding and abetting of a criminal daw involved. Paano po mangyayari nito pag medyo defiant ang Senate?
Well, that will be resolved when the Supreme Court decides the petition of Bato, no? Senator Bato. Dahil they raised the issue that warrant of ICC cannot be enforced here. So, pag sinabi ng Supreme Court that is enforceable here, then they become liable for preventing the law enforcers from enforcing it. No?
And Justice, I'd like to ask kasi madami rin nagtatanong, nung tumakbo po ang team ni Senator Bato sa Supreme Court and wala pong linabas na TRO, at that point ba pwede bang arestuhin si Bato or kailangan hintayin po yung resolution ng Supreme Court?
Well, pag walang TRO, they can enforce the warrant of arrest. No?
And Senator Bato is considered as fugitive po.
Yes, I think he is a fugitive from justice now dahil he has been evading the service of the warrant of arrest. That's the definition of a fugitive from justice, no?
Right, right. Yun nga po, no, kasi ngayon po, recently, kumbaga parang ang stand po ng DOJ ay parang yan po ay isang technical term, hindi po nila diretsang masabi na fugitive ito si Senator Bato de la Rosa. What do you make of how is the government handling the situation that involves Senator Bato de la Rosa? Are they being too careful? Because we all understand that the ICC warrant of Senator Bato de la Rosa is no different from the warrant of the former president.
That is correct. It's the same warrant. It says the same effect, no? So dapat they should enforce it. Wala namang TRO. So mahirap yung teka-teka. Sasabihin na i-enforce, pinadala yung NBI, tapos babawiin. They have to be consistent. Ang tingin ko naman dyan, valid yung warrant of arrest because may jurisdiction naman yung ICC. Because this is a crime against humanity. May jurisdiction. Hindi mo masabi na walang jurisdiction. Talagang may jurisdiction ng ICC over crimes against humanity. Now, pag may jurisdiction, automatically, they can issue a warrant of arrest. And we recognize that because first, that is part of customary international law. Sabi natin, the Philippines automatically adopts general principles of international, like customary international law, as part of the law of the land. So we recognize that. And yung Republic Act 1951, nakalagay doon, the government authority can, has the option to surrender. So sinasabi doon, it's up to the government authority to recognize and to surrender to that body. Kasi pag sinabi mo you can surrender, then you give the authority to recognize the entity to whom you are surrendering, the accused. So, automatic yan. Pag sinabi, I authorize you to surrender, i-recognize natin.
Justice, sorry, go ahead, Justice.
There is recognition of the authority of the ICC on two grounds because that's a customary international law. At saka sa batas natin, nire-recognize na natin under Republic Act 1951.
That's right. Justice, we spoke to si Attorney Torion, I think the other day, and we raised that issue about Republic Act 9851. Ang sabi naman daw niya, wala naman daw procedures nakalagay. So hindi naman nakasabi na outright surrender. Malay mo daw, baka kailangan i-present sa court. So minabuti niyang i-test sa Supreme Court.
Well, simple lang ang language ng batas. The government has the option to surrender. Wala namang nakalagay subject to implementing rules and regulation. Wala naman nakalagay doon sa Republic Act 1951 that there shall be implementing rules and regulations. So, okay, you have the option to surrender. That's the authority to surrender already.
Alright. So, Justice, yung argument nila na kailangan ng procedures para may guidelines, hindi na po required yan.
Wala naman nakalagay doon. There will be implementing rules Wala nakalagay sa batas
And they're also citing yung Article 59 daw po of the Rome Statute. What do you say? What do you make about it?
Well, yung Article 59, we have to follow that if we are still a member.
Right.
Because Duterte withdrew, we don't follow that. We follow now 9851, Republic Act 9851. Hindi na tayo susunod doon sa procedure on surrender under the rules of under the ICC, no? Sundin na natin ngayon yung 9851. Wala naman nakasabi doon, may rules and regulations. Basta the government is authorized to surrender. Exactly what we did kay former President Duterte. Sinurrender natin. Wala namang sinabi ang Supreme Court, mali yan.
At Justice, okay, for the sake of argument, sabihin na po natin na ito po yung argumento na ganun na lamang po ba na talagang dito po sa ating bansa ay pagka may mga ganitong klaseng kaso ay talagang dapat hayaan na lang natin ang international court to, deal with this? Hindi na po dito sa ating bansa. Just for the sake of argument.
Option. Option. We have the option. Hindi naman tayo obligado. Option lang. Nasa atin yan. Ang storya nito, the history of the law, during that time in 2009, the president was President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. She was not convinced na we become a member of ICC. So in the meantime, ito yung ginawa nila. Pag hindi ka member ng ICC, itong gagawin natin. May option tayo kasi at that time, President Arroyo was worried na we will be forced to surrender. So ginawa niya option. Option to surrender or to prosecute here. Pero later on, naging member tayo. But now we are not a member. So balik tayo to the situation before we became a member.
Right.
Which is governed by 9th Republic Act 9851. Option lang. Hindi tayo obligado, but we have the option. So the option is given to the President. It's up to the President to decide. That is the authority of the law given to the President. May option ka. Gusto mo applyin dito o isurrender mo na lang?
Right. Justice, right now we're waiting for the decision of the Supreme Court, and if it turns out na negative ang decision kay Senator Bato, pero parang yung defense team niya has made it clear that the only time that isusuko nila si Senator Bato is if there is a local or an affirmation from the local court on the warrant. That's the only time daw. So, when the Supreme Court comes out with a decision, pwede na hulihin ka agad, Justice?
Well, if the Supreme Court says that no need for a local warrant, because we recognize, kasi under international law, kasi nakalagay sa ligang batas natin, the Philippines adopts as part of the law of the land, general principles of international law. Tinatawag nila customary international law. Under customary international law, general principles of international law, itong crimes na ito, apat yan eh. Genocide, war crimes, crime of aggression, and crimes against humanity. Special crimes ito that the offended party here is not only the Filipino people but entire humanity. That's why there is universal jurisdiction. Wherever you are found in China, you are found in Europe, in any country in Europe, kasi member sila ng ICC, or in Africa, which are whatever country, kahit na you committed the crime in the Philippines, any court of any state has jurisdiction. Tawag nila yan, universal jurisdiction.
Okay.
So, meron din jurisdiction ng ICC by treaty, by convention, yung Rome Statute. So, pag may jurisdiction ka, you have the authority to issue a warrant of arrest. Tayo, we recognize the ICC. Kahit na nag-withdraw tayo, we still recognize it as an international tribunal.
Okay.
At saka, nakalagay doon, the Philippine Government Authority has the option to surrender to the appropriate international tribunal. Ang appropriate international tribunal is ICC. So authority yung sa President of the Philippines to surrender.
That's right, that's right.
Well, what do you make of... go ahead po.
So, klarong-klaro, we recognize. Right now, we recognize the ICC dahil that's part of customary international law. Nakalagay sa ligang batas natin yun eh. Yung crime against humanity, we recognize that ICC is the competent authority, competent court. At saka may batas tayo sa sinasabi na the government authority represented by the President can have the option to surrender to that court.
Right.
Even if we are not a member, because this law was passed when we were not a member.
Okay. All right. Of course, before we let you go, of course, we would want to know get your reaction doon po sa naging komento ng OSG regarding this.
Well, tama yun. I agree with the OSG completely. Maganda. It's well-prepared memorandum, and that's also my opinion. No?
Alright. On that note, maraming salamat po muli sa inyong oras, former Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio. Good morning po.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning. You're still watching News and Views here on One News.
A recent 3-hour brownout hit parts of Luzon, underscoring continued strain on the country's power grid during periods of high electricity demand. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines earlier placed the Luzon grid under red alert, signaling critically thin reserves and triggering rotating power interruptions in affected areas. Now, despite of intermittent outages, consumers have continued to report rising electricity bills, raising concerns over pricing and supply stability in the power system. Energy authorities are now reviewing grid performance, including supply shortages and unplanned shutdowns of generating plants during peak demand periods.
Ang nakakalungkot dito, sa dulo ng lahat, once mag-procure ang electric cooperatives at ang distribution utilities sa spot market, automatic pass-on yan. Ang may kasalanan dyan, NGCP at yung mga nag-unforced shutdowns ng mga planta.
Tinitingnan natin kung mayroong mga badges or mga pahiwating na mayroong anti-competitive behavior na nangyayari na pag ang isang planta ay naka-outage at hindi nga siya makapagbenta ng kanyang kuryente. Pero meron namang ibang kaalyado niya o yung affiliate niya na nakakabenepisyo out of the higher Western prices.
Joining us now is Attorney Maria Corazon Hines, Director of the Legal Service of the Energy Regulatory Commission o ERC. Good morning and thank you for joining us again, Attorney.
Good morning to everyone.
Ano po ba yung current assessment ng ERC dito sa mga recent brownouts and red alert status declared over the Luzon Grid?
Ang nangyari dito from our ends, ni-require namin ng NGCP na mag-submit ng explanation kung ano yung nangyari, ano yung specific date, time, and duration of each red and yellow alert, ano yung areas of transmission regions affected, ano yung root cause, ano yung triggering factors, ano yung mga generating units, transmission lines na nag-force outage, generating, at mga iba pang mga information. Sumagot naman ang NGCP, kaya lang meron pa rin kaming mga katanungan na dapat nilang sagutin. Kaya hindi muna kami makakapagbigay sa ngayon ng complete assessment kung ano yung mga kadahilanan at saka kung ano yung mga aksyon na gagawin namin. Pero ongoing naman yung aming investigasyon dito.
Well, Attorney, nag-imbestiga kayo at wala pa yung final assessment. No? Ano po yung initial na nakikita nyo cost ng mga itong brownouts na nangyayari?
Okay. Umpisa natin doon sa Visayas kasi ito yung nauna yung yellow alert. Pag sinabi nating yellow alert ay meron pang sufficienteng supply para mapunan yung demand. Kaya lang, kulang na yung reserba. Kaya ang mangyayari niyan, kung kunwari sa ganitong pagkakataon, meron ulit magkaroon ng force outage na generating plant, magkukulang na yung supply ng kuryente para mapunan yung demand ng ating mga consumers, yung pangangailangan ng ating mga consumers. Kaya doon na magkakaroon ng rotating brownouts. Doon naman sa Luzon, yung red alert na yan, ay kulang na talaga yung supply ng kuryente para sa ating mga consumers. Kaya tayo nagkaroon ng rotational brownouts. Ang sanhi ng red alerts doon sa Luzon ay una, noong May 13 ito una, nag-trip yung linya ng NGCP. Ngayon, ang kasabayan naman yan, nagkaroon din ng mga forced outages ng ilang planta. At meron na rin mga planta na bago pa man nagkaroon ng tripping, ay naka-forced outage na din. Meron din yung tinatawag natin na derated na yung capacity o mas mababa na yung kapasidad na naibabato nila kesa dun sa installed generating capacity nila nung bago pa silang nag-ooperate. Kaya nung nagkasama-sama yon, ang naging resulta ay nagkulang na yung supply ng kuryente para mapunan lahat ng demand ng ating mga consumers. Kaya tayo nagkaroon ng red alert at rotational brownouts.
Well, I was wondering nga po kung talagang ito pong sitwasyon natin was really, napag-aralan dahil meron po bang enough reserve power talaga? Kasi parang, di ba po, nakikita naman po natin yan, depende po sa demand ng per grid.
Kung tumatakbo lahat yan, kung walang naka-force outage, walang naka-generating, sufficient naman. Kaya nga ngayon, nasa normal tayo eh. Pag sinabing normal condition, ay sapat yung supply at sapat din yung reserve para mapunan yung pangangailangan nating mga consumers. So may mga pagkakataon talaga na sufficient pa rin naman, na sapat pa yung supply natin, including yung mga reserves, maski may naka-forced outage. Kaya lang, nung mga panahon na nga lang yun, nagkasabay-sabay. Kaya hindi din pa rin namin ma-pinpoint kung ano ba talaga, kung sino yung talagang kailangang panagutin, at yun yung kadahilanan kung bakit tayo nagkaroon ng red and yellow alerts.
Well,
so yun pa yung pinag-aralan taga namin.
Oo, antayin po natin yung yung magiging
Official
resulta po na inyong investigation. But of course, people are asking na po, ang publiko, dahil nakakaranas po sila ng mga rotational brownouts, and then may mga anunsyo na mayroong pagtaas, di ba, ng electricity cost nila. Paano po natin ma-explain yun sa kanila?
Yung pagtaas naman, kasi kapag bumababa kasi yung supply sa merkado, tumataas yung presyo. Kaya yun yung pinakasimpleng kadahilanan kung bakit nagkakaroon ng demand. So law of supply and demand talaga yan. Pag mababa yung supply, mataas ang presyo. Pag mataas yung supply, mababa din yung presyo. Kaya nga, ang pinag-aaralan talaga ngayon ay madagdagan talaga yung supply natin. Huwag lang tayong mag-rely doon sa mga current na capacity. Kaya nga tinitingnan namin ngayon ay yung pagtaas ng supply, at pati na din yung pag-improve at pag-extend din ng mga transmission lines ng NGCP. Kasi magkaakibat yan eh. Yung supply ng kuryente, kailangan may dadaluyan. At yun namang supply ay kailangan ding dadaluyan. Kaya kung wala yung isa doon, hindi pa rin matutugunan yung mga pangangailangan natin sa mga consumers. Kasi kung kulang ang supply, kahit meron siyang daluyan ng kuryente, hindi pa rin sapat sa consumer. Pag sa kabaligtaran naman, kahit na meron kang dadaluyan, kung kulang naman yung supply mo, ay magkukulang pa rin. Kaya magkaakibat talaga yung dalawang yan. Generation at saka transmission of electricity. Isama mo na rin yung distribution system. Kasi yung mga distribution lines naman ng mga distribution utilities natin ang nagtatawid mula sa transmission line hanggang sa ating mga kabahayan.
Attorney, ang tanong ko sa rin ng marami, yung stability in the long term ng supply ng kuryente. Kasi number one daw, given na daw, predictable na yung weather pattern. So, pag pumapalo ng summer, lalakas talaga daw ang konsumo. Tapos number two, with the fast expansion of businesses at nadadagdag ng mga households, for sure daw tataas talaga ang demand. So natatakot ang marami, baka maging continued occurrence yung brownout para nangyari nung I think early 90s.
Actually, yun nga talaga yung dapat na mangyari. Kaya nga ang palagi naming sinasabi ay dapat magkaroon ng additional generating capacity. Pag tayo ng dagdag na planta, para din yung mga legacy, tinatawag namin mga legacy plants, yung mga lumang planta na palaging nagkakaroon ng maintenance, ay meron na rin naman yung kapalit kung kasakaling magkaroon sila ng mga preventive maintenance na gagawin. So yun yung una. Pangalawa din, kailangan yung ating mga transmission lines ay madagdagan din. Kaya kasi ang nangyari nung nagkaroon ng tripping, wala na kasing ibang dadaanan. Yung capacity ng mga planta papunta sa atin. Kaya meron kami tinatawag na N-1. Kailangan merong alternatibong dadaanan sana yung capacity na yun para doon na dumaloy yung kuryente para makarating pa rin sa atin. So yun yung mga kailangang investments din doon sa transmission. Kaya nga kami sa ERC, ang binibigyan talaga namin ng pansin ay yung mga power supply agreements at saka yung rates din ng NGCP para matugunan yung kanilang mga pangangailangan para maitayo nila kung ano yung mga plantang mga kailangan at kung ano yung mga capital expenditures at facilities na kailangan para ma-improve at madagdagan pa yung ating mga transmission lines.
Well, thank you for that, Attorney. No? Pero we'll keep in touch with you pag meron na po kayong final assessment sa inyong investigation. But for now, maraming salamat. Attorney Maria Corazon Hines, Director of the Legal Service of the Energy Regulatory Commission.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning at maraming salamat po.
Right, in other news, amid speculation that some allies may switch sides, Senator Rodante Marcoleta has a strong warning for members of the Senate Majority Bloc. Here's the report.
Tension there remains high as speculation of another leadership coup lingers at the Senate. Senator Rodante Marcoleta warned that anyone who would leave the current 13-member majority bloc would be worse than Judas. According to Marcoleta, Senator Bato de la Rosa risked his safety in order to attend the Senate session and deliver the crucial 13th vote for Cayetano during last week's leadership battle. Marcoleta urged members of the majority not to disregard de la Rosa's sacrifices by switching allegiance.
Kaya mas masahol pa kay Judas yung maghuhuda sa amin.
So nakonsensya si Senator Mix kaya
Huwag na kayo magbanggit ng kung sino. Sinabi ko lang yun sa grupo namin. Hindi namin kagrupo si Senator Mix.
Reports earlier surfaced that several senators behind SP Cayetano are allegedly being persuaded to jump ship. The Senate majority holds a slim 13-11 advantage over the minority bloc, right after Senators Mig Zubiri and JV Ejercito joined the group. The two previously identified as independents, even abstaining from the May 11 vote that ousted then Senate President Tito Soto. For the Senate coup to succeed, at least 4 senators need to switch sides. Sources claim there are 4 Senate members who are willing to do so, provided that Senator Chiza Escudero returns as SP. However, some members of the current minority bloc rejected the idea. Minority Senator Raffy Tulfo has denied they are moving to unseat Cayetano.
Oh, maganda naman. Dito po, maayos kami, solid kami.
allegedly merong pananakot daw po.
Pananakot?
Pananakot daw po para sumama sa inyo, sa side
Ay,
niyo yung mga...
hindi namin gagawin yun. At never, ni isa sa amin, hindi gumawa ng ganon. We will not do that. Why would we?
At this point, let's check the latest over at the Senate. We have our mobile journalist, Merimon Reyes. Merimon, kamusta na dyan sa Senado?
Angela, Diego, though meron ng committee chairmanships na na-assign since Monday and then kahapon nadagdag si Senator Mark Villar as Finance Committee Chairman, wala pa ngayong schedule ng mga committee hearings. Pero ang sure pa rin naman, mamayang hapon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, magkakaroon muli dito ng sesyon kung sakaling merong pending bills na i-refer sa kanilang mga komite, privileged speeches or other administrative matters, maisasalang yan sa plenaryo. Dapat kahapon din, pagkatapos ng sesyon, we were anticipating or expecting a briefing with Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano kasi yung sesyon kahapon, kasabay yan ng ginagawang presser naman sa palasyo kung saan nakakaroon ng replay ng CCTV footage and sinasabi nga ng DILG na lahat daw ng ebidensya, it points to show na walang attack na ginawa sa Senado o na nangyari sa Senado last week. Pero ang nakausap natin during that time, si Senator Robin Padilla, ang sabi niya, hindi raw siya makapagsalita sa nangyari kasi wala raw siya dito sa second floor. Nasa 5th floor daw siya kasama si Senator Bato de la Rosa. Nung minutes later daw, bumaba siya, kinumusta niya raw yung mga kaibigan niyang senador and then umakyat daw siya ulit kasama si Senator Bato. What he confirmed sa kanya nga raw yung nakuhanan ng media na sasakyan pero tikom yung bibig niya at sinasabi niya hintayin na lang daw yung investigasyon kung gusto talagang malaman nga na kung sakay ba talaga nito si Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Meron ka na ba nakuhang reaksyon mula kay Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano regarding the investigation report ng DILG stating na walang attack na nangyari sa Senado?
Angela, yan dapat yung ibubungad talaga nating tanong kahapon. Pero dahil hindi natuloy yung briefing, iniintay natin na mangyari siya ngayon o bago mag-start yung session. Yung huling nabanggit kasi ng liderato ni SP Cayetano, he maintains yung notion niya o yung stance niya since last week na the Senate was under attack during that time. And though nagkaroon ng pag-amin from Sergeant at Arms General Mau Aplasca na sa kanya nagaling yung warning shot, yung unang warning shot, nagkaroon din ng palitan on the side naman of the NBI, sinusustain pa rin ni SP na yun yung nangyari dito sa Senado. And ang sinasabi pa nga, yung mga senador na nandito, na tumabi sila kasi iniisip daw nila yung kanilang safety and yung security. Kaya nga nung time na yun, nagkaroon pa ng other assistance from the Marines para ma-help secure yung lugar na to. Pero ang sinasabi nga ni SP, the Senate was under attack during that time. Pero we're yet to know ngayon kung ano ang napag-usapan ng mga senador from the majority kahapon after the session and kung ano magiging stance ngayon ng liderato tungkol nga doon sa DILG na nakita nila.
Meron several senators from the minority and majority na may kanya-kanyang panawagan for an investigation. Sinabi nga ni Senator Erwin Tulfo na kung magkaroon ng investigation, gusto rin niya sana na parang bawiin ang sinabi ng majority about yung minority na supposedly parte dito or may alam dito dahil maagang umuwi. May narinig ka about this?
Yung ibang mga senador from the minority during that time, for example, sina Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, sina Senator Rizzo Hontiveros, ang sinasabi nila, wala silang ideya whatsoever. Ito yung claims kasi ng ilang members from the majority na may idea daw yung ilang mga miyembro ng minority, kaya raw sila maagang nagsialisan. Pero ang sinasabi na itong mga senador from the minority, tapos na raw ang office hours. Kaya yun naman daw usually yung alis nila. And tayo rin personal, nakikita din natin na around those time, mga 7 o kaya before 7, kung maaga mang matatapos yung session, kung wala naman ng ibang matters sa opisina itong mga senador, aalis sila. Yun yung sinasabi ng senators from the minority. Ang nasabi rin kahapon ni Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, mas maganda rin daw kung magkaroon ng independent investigation, third party. Hindi lang daw yung Senado para mas maging malinaw at impartial kung ano nga ba yung nangyari. Kasi we have two narratives to the story, yung sa side ng NBI, sa side ng OSAA, dito ng Senado. And while investigations are happening here and there, mas maganda para magkaroon pa ng independent na fact-finding investigation tungkol talaga sa nangyari.
Meron kasi may claim na ang initial na tinawag na meeting ni SP Cayetano ay all-member caucus or all-member caucus. Tapos biglang pinalitan daw ito mid-afternoon at sinabing all-majority caucus lang. Do you have any idea kung bakit nangyari ito na biglang ginawang all-majority na lang at hindi na all-members?
If ito yung nangyari yung last week, wala pa tayong ibang info tungkol doon. Pero yung kahapon, yung pagpupulong ng mga senador, though hindi siya caucus, ito naman daw yung ang nakuha nating info from SP Cayetano staff, is ito na naman daw usually kumakain sila, kung may mga mapag-uusapan daw sa mga nangyayari, kumakain, or any other catching up na kinakailangan. Pero yung nangyari last week, wala pa tayong info tungkol doon. Kasi what happened, it was may session and then nagkaroon na sumiklab na, nangyari na yun umalis din yung mga members from the minority. Yung members of the majority, nag-stay sila dito, Senator Bato de la Rosa was still here. And then came early morning, kinabukasan, wala na si Senator Bato de la Rosa. And ang sinasabi naman ni Senator Robin tungkol dyan, hinihintay niya raw na merong mag-imbita sa kanya na law enforcement agencies or mga fact-finding bodies para raw kung sakali may kakailangan info, hinihintay niya lang daw kung kakailangan yung participation niya in the process.
Ako naman, Merrimon, I want to ask you about the reaction of Senator Jinggoy Estrada dito sa recommendation na ma-filean ng kaso ang mga supposedly involved dito sa flood control projects. At ano yung magiging game plan ng Senado kung sakasakali masampahan siya ng kaso at magkaroon ng mga pag-aresto na naman, di ba? At lalo ngayon na merong impeachment case against the Vice President.
Angela, weeks before pa, nung umuugong, lumulutang kasi yung pangalan din ni Senator Jinggoy Estrada. For example, sa flood control anomalies, yung iba pang mga posibleng may anomalya or may kinalaman itong senador, ang sinasabi ng kanyang kampo lagi, susundin daw nila yung due process. Pero tungkol doon sa naging resolution na lumabas this week, na may recommended charges ng plunder, bribery, yun yung ilan sa mga recommended na charges. Ang sinasabi dito ng senador is it was unfair daw, hindi at nakakalito raw yun, lalo't wala naman daw records na pinapakitang meron siyang insertion sa 2025 national budget. So that's the most that we have as of this moment. Kahapon nakita naman natin si Senator Jinggoy. And ang pinakasinasabi naman nila, they will still undergo yung due process na kinakailangan. Pero still, ang pinanghahawakan nila, wala naman daw siyang insertions na ginawa.
Alright, maraming salamat, mobile journalist Berrimon Reyes. Now, authorities are raising national security concerns over a steel plant in Misamis Oriental following a joint operation that led to the arrest of dozens of Chinese nationals. Mobile Journal Jas Paredes reports.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines has described a steel plant in Tagoloan, Misamis Oriental as a potential threat to the country's infrastructure and national security. 69 Chinese nationals and 1 Filipino were arrested during a joint operation carried out by the NBI, AFP, PNRI, PCG, PNP, PAF, and PAOK, following the service of a search warrant against Philippines Sanjia Steel Corporation. The company, registered in 2018 inside the Pivotec Industrial Estate in Tagoloan, began operations in 2020, producing steel billets, reinforcing bars, and other steel products. But authorities say the facility was found to have alleged violations involving hazardous materials, labor standards, immigration regulations, and consumer protection laws.
Operations na naganap nitong May 16 resulted dito sa detention ng around 69 allegedly undocumented Chinese nationals. They were found that they were working in the said property, and the identification of suspected substandard steel output that could endanger public infrastructure dito sa ating bansa.
Those arrested may face charges for violations of the Philippine Nuclear Energy and Safety Act, the Labor Code of the Philippines, immigration laws, and the Consumer Act. It was also revealed that nearly 1 million metric tons of steel rebar are currently stockpiled inside the company's warehouses, with inventories continuing to increase. Officials warn this could pose serious health, environmental, and security risks.
The handling of hazardous materials, lalong-lalo na po dito sa ating mga workers dyan sa area. Meron din itong close proximity to a Philippine Navy dry dock that is being constructed over a 300-hectare portion dito po sa PVDEC compound. And so this raises a national security risk as well as an environmental concern.
Padilla emphasized that the alleged circulation of substandard steel products could compromise the safety of buildings and other critical structures across the country. The NBI is now conducting backtracking operations to identify companies and projects that may have purchased the firm's steel products since it started operating. Authorities are also investigating its possible links to the United Front Works operations.
This could be another similar activity which we are trying to check if this is part of foreign interference, malign influence operations. Considering that Chinese nationals were involved, Filipinos were part of the labor force, and this could be part of the United Front Works, for all we know. That's what we are checking as of now.
The company has also been linked to Tony Yang, brother of Michael Yang, former economic advisor to former President Rodrigo Duterte. Meanwhile, an Octa research survey revealed that 7 out of 10 Filipinos continue to trust and are satisfied with the performance of the AFP. Its tugon ng masa survey conducted from March 19 to 25 showed that 72% of adult Filipinos trust the AFP while only 11% responded to distrust.
Ang magandang i-highlight din dito, 100% ng adult Filipinos are aware of the presence of the AFP. And ang mataas po na suporta na binibigay ng ating mga kababayan is for the modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines. So these are really very good numbers for us, and hindi namin sisirain ang tiwala na ibinigay ng taong bayan.
Kapatid Jas Paredes, R1 News.
The Philippine Coast Guard deployed an aircraft in a patrol vessel on Tuesday after a China Coast Guard ship was detected drifting about 48 nautical miles west of Pandan, Zambales. The PCG said the vessel was first flagged by Canada's Dark Vessel Detection Program, prompting a maritime response to verify and challenge the ship's presence. A PCG patrol aircraft confirmed a China Coast Guard Vessel 4305 in the area and conducted repeated radio challenges, but received no clear response from the Chinese crew. The BRP Cape San Agustin was later deployed to the site to continue maritime challenges as the Coast Guard asserted Philippine jurisdiction within the country's exclusive economic zone.
The newly opened EV Hub in Balintawak, Quezon City features a range of fully electric commercial vehicles, highlighting efforts to support fleet operators and businesses transitioning to electric mobility. Mobile journalist Evan Tarinque has the report.
From cargo vans, pickups, and light-duty trucks to buses and tractor heads, various fully electric commercial vehicles are now on display at the new Photon EV Hub along A. Bonifacio Avenue in Balintawak, Quezon City. Photon reopened its A. Bonifacio dealership but with a new role, serving as its flagship EV hub dedicated to commercial vehicles. Part of its EV ecosystem are charging stations, spare parts availability, technical support, and after-sales services for fleet operators and businesses. The nearly 2,000 square meter facility features an EV showroom and service area that can accommodate up to 10 to 15 vehicles for maintenance and repairs.
Recently, we've experienced an increase in the growth of acceptance from business owners to they're willing to try and use electric vehicles in their businesses.
The launch also comes as the government continues to push for wider EV adoption in both public and private transport sectors. According to the Department of Energy, the government has increased its target for electric vehicle fleet adoption from 5% to 10% as part of its transition toward electric mobility. Unlike most commercial vehicles that rely on diesel engines, fully electric units could help cut emissions while supporting the country's electric vehicle roadmap.
It will definitely reduce the emissions or improve the environment, particularly because this is particularly kung 100% electric vehicle ka, walang emission yan.
As interest in electric vehicles continue to grow, some businesses are also looking at the potential savings from lower fuel and maintenance costs. Electric vehicles require less maintenance due to few moving parts compared to traditional internal combustion engine vehicles.
It's cleaner for our environment. Two is the cost. Yes, initially maybe an electric vehicle would cost more, but in the long run, you actually get more savings with an electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine.
With the opening of this EV hub, electric mobility continues to expand not only for private vehicles, but also into the transportation, logistics, and business sectors that rely on commercial fleets. Kapatid Mobile Journal Ivan Tarinque, we are One News.
And masabi ko lang ha na sinasabi na Senator Bato daw risked his life. Excuse me. Trabaho ng isang senador or duty of a public servant to attend to work kung walang valid reason to be absent. Diba? So paano naging risk to life and trabaho niya yun eh. Diba? So ano reason niya? Wala naman family emergency, diba? And he doesn't recognize the arrest warrant naman. Hindi mo pala rin na-recognize eh. So pumasok ka.
Yeah.
Diba?
Pero maganda yung ni-raise na issue ni Arles kanina dun sa meeting ng mga legal experts and former government officials na if papayagan ang electronic voting or yung participation ng isang senador sa impeachment ay dapat sabihin kung saan yung location niya.
Yeah, Like for example, Senator Bato voting from this area in Quezon City, di ba? Kasi usually, for example, di ba, pag abroad ka and then you have to email your votes, di ba, parang nagkakaroon ng from the embassy, di ba? The vote was casted here at this time in the embassy on this date. So, especially something of as critical as this.
So, mamimili ka na lang. Diba? A-attend ka, but you have to disclose your location or wag ka na lang bumoto, wag ka na lang sumali. We'll see what's going to happen. But as of now, wala pa tayong naririnig regarding sa whereabouts ni Senator Bato de la Rosa. But NBI said meron na daw silang mga alam kung nasa.
Hero daw siya. Sacrifice.
Wala daw hero na tumatakbo, sabi ni Antonio.
Hindi mo daw siya tumatakbo, may hinahabol siyang pusa.
Ay, ganun ba?
And that wraps up today's episode of News and Views.
Join us again tomorrow. I'm Angela Lugunsad Castro.
And I'm Angelo Castro III. Kapatid, we are One News.
All sides, all the time.